Chapter 44. "Can I trust you to stand guard?" Jameson said to Matthew as they rounded a sharp bend in the passageway. "Gilmore and I need to set the explosive charges, and we don't need interference from the Indian." Matthew glared back at him, blood oozing from his nose and a cut on his forehead, painting his battered face scarlet. "Not a problem." He turned, a pistol in each hand, and fixed his eyes in the direction of the tunnel. He stood, feet wide apart, guns pointed forward like a video game character. Jameson shook his head, wondering again how he'd failed so badly as a parent. Matthew's posturing at least made what Jameson had to do a little more palatable. He pushed those thoughts from his mind as they chose the perfect spots to set the plastic explosives Gilmore had brought along for just this purpose. When the detonators were placed and all was ready, Gilmore gave him a long look. "It's time. Do you need me to do it?" "Is my screw-up, I'll take care of it." His stomach doing somersaults, Jameson strode back to where Matthew stood guard. He tucked his pistols into his belt and now stood, elbows akimbo, like a gunslinger ready to draw. Jameson vowed to slap him if he dared declare himself anyone's huckleberry. Matthew glanced over his shoulder. "No sign of them, bunch of cowards." "You're armed, they're not. They wouldn't stand a chance coming down this narrow tunnel." Privately, Jameson wondered if Bonebrake could in fact find a way. The man was highly competent and supremely self-assured. It was a touch surprising he hadn't made a bid for freedom. No matter now, it was almost over. "Damn right they wouldn't stand a chance," Matthew said. "That Indian jumped me from behind. He could never take me one-on-one." He didn't meet Jameson's eye as he made his declaration. "Hopefully we won't have to find out." Jameson hesitated for a split second, but Matthew didn't notice. "It's the right thing to do." Slowly, as not to draw Matthew's notice, he drew his pistol and raised it like a club. At least he won't know what's about to happen. He gritted his teeth and struck. Matthew went down in a heap. "I'm sorry, boy. You brought it on yourself." Holstering his pistol, Jameson turned, rounded the corner, and made his way back to Gilmore. The ICE agent was waiting, arms folded, an expectant look on his face. "It's done," Jameson said. "Let's blow this place and get out of here." "So what's this brilliant plan of yours?" Amanda didn't look at Bones. Instead, she glowered to the passageway where Matthew, his father, and Gilmore disappeared. Tension trembled through her body. She looked ready to chase after the man who'd held her captive minutes before. "We were so excited to find this chamber that we forgot one more clue." The others frowned, but Jesse's face brightened almost immediately. "The spider's web." "Most of these bodies represent ant people, but not this one." Bones indicated the body with 8 legs protruding from the head. "This is Grandmother Spider." Only Kruger appeared to know what he was talking about. The man smiled and nodded eagerly. "Depending on the mythology, Grandmother Spider, Spider Grandmother, or Spider Woman either serves the gods or is a deity herself. To some, she is the Earth Mother. To others, she is an intercessory between humankind and the Creator." Padilla pounded his fist into his palm. "I remember now. According to the Hopi, she opened the path into the 4th world, our world. She caused a hollow reed to grow to the sky, and it emerged as a sipapu in the 4th world," Kruger added. "The people climbed through it into our world." "You think this Grandmother Spider?" Jessie eyed the body with a glint of reluctance in her eyes. "Guards a sipapu that leads down into the 3rd world?" "Maybe not the 3rd world as the Hopi described it, but it makes sense she'd guard the way to a world below, don't you think?" "Only one way to find out," said Padilla. They examined the body carefully, looking under it for anything that might resemble a sipapu, the symbolic hole found at the center of a kiva, but found nothing. "Maybe underneath the slab?" Padilla suggested. Unlike the other 3 biers, a stone slab lay upon this one, supporting the body that represented Mother Spider. Working together, the 5 of them heaved and hauled until it finally shifted a few inches. A few more minutes' work, and they managed to pivot the top end 2 meters, far enough to reveal a gaping hole leading down into the earth. "You did it!" Jessie marveled. "I can't—" A thunderous boom rolled over her words, and the floor shook beneath their feet. Bones cast his eyes up toward the ceiling, fearing it might collapse, but he saw no cracks in the solid surface. "They blew the tunnel." "Should we check it out?" Padilla asked. "Might as well. If there's any chance of getting out the way we came in, that would be preferable to climbing down to who knows where." "And what if we can't get out?" Amanda asked. Then we pay a visit to the world below. Chapter 45. Bones could tell in a glance that there would be no returning to the surface through the lower cave. Jameson and Gilmore had done a thorough job of bringing down the tunnel. Huge chunks of solid rock lay piled from floor to ceiling. So much for that idea. But now they had another concern. "He left his own son down here to die?" Padilla asked. Around a sharp bend in the cave, shielded from the blast, Matthew lay semi-conscious, bleeding from a cut in the back of his head. He opened one eye at the sound of Padilla's voice. "You've got to be kidding me." His words came out slurred, his gaze wet. "You're the last people I want to see right now." He made a weak grab for his pistol, which lay a few feet away, but Bones stamped on his wrist. "Yeah, that's not happening. You want to live, you keep still." He and Padilla retrieved the pistols and knives Matthew had taken from them, along with Matthew's own pistol. He also retrieved the Book of Bones, which Matthew had tucked into his belt. "Just kill me already, you dirty Redskin piece of—" His words died in a squelched grunt as Bones drove a foot into his gut. "Manners. After all, we're not the ones who tried to kill you." Confusion slid across Matthew's glassy eyes. "Nobody tried to kill me. The charges went off too soon." He paused, swallowed hard. "I don't think my dad made it." "Don't bother explaining," Bones said to Padilla. "He'll figure it out soon enough." He turned back to Matthew. "Tell me where Mary is." "Go to hell." "Wrong answer." Lightning fast, Bones snatched Matthew's wrist and bent his hand backward. "Go ahead, break it," Matthew grunted. "That's not the plan." Bones drew his knife and pressed the tip beneath the nail of Matthew's index finger. "I'll ask again. Where's Mary?" Beads of sweat formed on Matthew's forehead, but he kept his silence as Bones pushed down on the knife. Okay, I'll tell you." Details spilled out. The name and location of the motel where she was being held captive and the room number. "You're lying." Bones twisted the knife and Matthew screamed. "I told you the truth!" "Tell me again, and if I don't believe you, I'll cut the finger off." Matthew began to blather, adding a few details but keeping his story consistent. When Bones was satisfied the man was telling the truth, he wiped the blade of his knife on Matthew's pants, stood and turned to Padilla. "Let's get out of here." "You don't think we should, finish him?" "Be my guest." Bones could tell by the look in Padilla's eye the man wouldn't murder Matthew, good idea or not. "I don't think he's going to be a problem, but just to be safe." He drew back his foot and kicked Matthew in the head, just hard enough to turn the man's lights out. "That'll keep him. Now let's see what's down below." Passage Chapter 46. The tiny passageway beneath Spider Grandmother's head was sharply angled. Not quite a vertical drop, but hardly an easy descent. Bones led the way, taking full advantage of the hand and footholds carved into the stone. The surface was cool and slick. Several times he lost his grip and skidded a few feet before arresting his fall. Padilla came next, the logic being that if he fell, he wouldn't take out the rest of the crew like so many bowling pins. Jesse, aside from Bones the most athletic, followed, then Amanda and Kruger. The bookish man at least had a bit of experience with this sort of thing, having once joined Bones and Maddock on a brief foray into Egypt. After a laborious climb down, they finally reached level ground. The passageway, straight and narrow, led to a familiar sight. Familiar, at least, to Bones. "It's another door, like the one at Alcone Rock." A gleaming silver door barred their way. Like the one he'd seen previously, it bore no markings and had no visible hinges, locks, or knobs. This door, however, had something the other did not, a square pad set in the wall to the left. "It's beautiful," Kruger breathed. "Flawless." He took a step back and grinned. "Who wants to be the one to touch the pad?" "You can do the honors if you like," Bones said. Privately, he wondered if the door would open for them. Kruger stepped forward and pressed his palm to the pad. Nothing happened. "Damn," Padilla cursed. Kruger pressed harder, the veins in his forearms bulging with the effort. The pad began to glow. A wide, thin beam of green light shone forth and ran up and down Kruger's body. Then the light spread to take them all in. "I don't like this," Amanda said as the light enveloped her. After several seconds, it stopped, and then, with barely a whisper, the door slid to the side. "Holy crap," Bones said. "It actually opened." "You first, big guy. This is your rodeo." He felt Amanda's hands on the small of his back, nudging him forward, but he was already moving. Wondering what lay on the other side, he stepped through the doorway. He'd expected to find something remarkable on the other side, but there was nothing to see save a continuation of the passageway. He continued on, the others falling into step behind him. "I wonder why it opened for us," Padilla said, "if it was meant to keep people out." "We don't know what it was meant for," Bones said. "Gilmore said the trouble between humans and these aliens, or ant people, or whatever they are, is fairly recent, but this entrance hasn't been used since the Puebloans created that shrine." "Centuries upon centuries ago," Kruger said. "Maybe millennia." "That's what I'm thinking. Hopefully whoever is down here had a good relationship with the natives." "Good thing we've got the native leading the way," Amanda said. Bones rounded a corner, and his sarcastic reply died on his lips. He froze. "What is it?" Jesse whispered. "Everybody stand right where you are," he said, "and slowly put your hands above your heads." Chapter 47. Matthew came to with a pounding headache. The Indian had kicked him in the head, he remembered that much, but that wasn't all, was it? No, he'd first been knocked out by flying debris from the explosion, but... No, the timing was all wrong. His dad had been talking to him, then the next thing he knew, he was looking up at the Indian and the old rancher. Bile rising in his throat, he understood. The Indian hadn't lied. Sheriff Jameson, his own father, had left him here to die. The man had chosen ice over his own son. Son of a... Just then he became aware of another pain, burning and stabbing at the tip of his finger. In the beam of his headlamp, which miraculously still burned, he saw sticky blood covering his hand, and the memory of the Indian sliding his knife beneath Matthew's fingernail swam to the surface. His stomach lurched and a wave of dizziness passed over him. How could so small a hurt cause him so much pain? "I'm gonna find that Redskin and I'm gonna kill him." "Put your hands above your heads." Bones followed his own instructions, spreading his fingers wide to show he wasn't holding anything, and raising his hands above his head. Hopefully this was sufficient to convey he meant no harm, because the last thing he wanted to do was threaten the being that stood before him. The creature stood about 5 feet tall, its large head, bulbous eyes, and thin, sinewy arms and legs very much resembling the so-called alien greys or Roswell greys of UFO folklore. Its chest and hips were thickly muscled and its waist narrow, giving its torso a segmented appearance, like that of an ant. Adding to its ant-like appearance were a second set of arms, stunted with claws where the hands should be, extending from its abdomen, and a pair of silvery antennae, so fine as to be almost invisible in the near darkness. These were in constant motion. Given that the creature had no visible nose or ears, Bones assumed the antennae did the work. The ant person, as Bones found himself thinking of the being, was clearly old. A hint of yellow tinged its gray skin, which hung in folds at its joints. Cradle moons of purple hung beneath its eyes, and specks of white hair dotted its chest. "I hope old ant-men aren't as crotchety as their human counterparts." The being clutched a silver rod, tipped with a gleaming purple crystal. Bones had seen a few artifacts very much like it in his time, and they were not to be trifled with. "Is that an Atlantean weapon?" At the sound of Kruger's voice, the ant-man let out a hiss, baring thin, spiky teeth, and leveled his weapon. "It's similar," Bones said. "Let's not find out, though." "Did you say Atlantean?" Amanda piped up. "Not now," Bones said. Its large eyes were glossy black, but somehow Bones knew it was staring at him. He stared back, uncertain how to proceed. As he searched for the words, it held out one hand, palm up, and tilted its head forward a fraction. Bones almost laughed at how human the gesture was. Apparently, what the hell do you want was universal, literally. "We want to get out." He pointed up at the ceiling. "Out," he repeated. The ant-man seemed to understand. It moved to the side and pointed down the tunnel. "We communicated with it," Kruger said. Once again, the being hissed. "I don't think he likes white people," Bones said, "and you're the only one in the group who fits that description, so maybe you should hang back a little." "Agreed." Kruger sounded disappointed. Bones once again took the lead, and the ant person fell in step behind them. After 10 minutes, a greenish glow appeared in the distance, soon growing bright enough that they could turn off their headlamps. They emerged on a narrow ledge. Down below, a magnificent sight greeted them. They were looking into a broad cavern, illuminated by the glow of green crystal set in the ceiling. The walls were honeycombed with stairs and cliff dwellings, all sliced out of the rock with laser precision. At the cavern's center was carved a sunken, perfectly round room. A stone bench encircled the space. To one side, walled off by 3 vertical stones, a small carcass, perhaps a rat, roasted on a spit over glowing embers. A well lay at the center, the surface of the water shining in the emerald glow. A group of ant people, fewer than a dozen, went about their daily activities. Some tended children, while another sliced up chunks of a mushroom-like fungus. None paid any mind to the intruders into their realm. "It's like a sci-fi Mesa Verde," Kruger whispered. "The Anasazi dwellings must have been modeled after this." "And that spot in the middle is the inspiration for their kivas," Bones added. "Do you think that's all of them?" Jessie asked. "I mean, all these cliff dwellings should be able to hold 1,000 or more, wouldn't you think?" Bones shrugged. "They've been here for a long time. Maybe this is all that's left." The ant person chittered and jabbed Kruger with his crystal-tipped rod. The message was clear. Keep moving. "You're right, he really doesn't like me." Kruger cast one last, longing glance at the ant people's home before heading along the ledge to a spot where another gleaming door stood. The ant person placed its hand on the pad and the door slid up. Behind it, a steep passage wound its way upward. The being pointed through the doorway. "Thank you." Bones didn't know if it understood him, but no harm in being polite. Amanda pressed her palms together and made a small bow. Surprisingly, the creature inclined its head in response. "I think he likes girls," Amanda said. "I don't care what he likes," Medea said. "I just want to get out of here."